will be running against him in the fall, of course. One of those four people, Murphy, Leibovitz, Tabor, or Zidane. So the question is this: based on whatever numbers we get tonight, do you feel that the results we see tonight will have that much of an effect, if you will, on what happens in November? Or are the primaries all about the parties? We'll start with Jeanette.
Well, I think, listen, any Republican who wins tonight is going to have an uphill battle facing Cory Booker. It's just the math. It's tough for Republicans to win a U.S. Senate seat. It hasn't happened since 1972. And I don't mean to pour cold water on any of these Republican primary opponents. It's just the way the state is on some of these federal election years. Curtis Bashaw, who I worked with in 2024, he came the closest, I think, in recent memory, besides Bob Franks in 2000, only losing by, by about 5 points. But I think people are really favoring Cory Booker to win by a decent margin. That doesn't mean to say that Republicans shouldn't put up a good fight. I think Alex Zidane is probably going to emerge victorious. He has the most organizational support and a lot of grassroots momentum behind him. But we'll see what happens when the results come in. I know Tabor also has some county support in Ocean and Atlantic counties. So we'll see what happens. But listen, I think whoever wins is going to put up a good fight against Cory Booker in November.
Well, the question then becomes, do any of the people who run against a Cory Booker, whoever that person might be, do they run thinking they actually have a shot, or do they run to establish a name for a future race?
Well, I think both. I mean, listen, anything could happen in New Jersey politics. I mean, look what happened with Bob Menendez. Everyone thought he was going to be
Sure.
senator for the rest of his life, and he was indicted, right? So you have to run like you're going to win. And also, I think whoever's the opponent against Cory Booker is going to make a little bit of hay out of the fact that a lot of times he's not in New Jersey and he's planning his next run for president. And is he really representing New Jersey's interests, or is he looking to launch his next presidential campaign? Also, it is a good idea if you want to run for statewide office to make a name for yourself, as you said, Ken, and get your name ID out there. So there could be a dual purpose to running, but you have to run like you want to win.
Yeah. And Brendan, isn't every senator in the back of their minds fantasizing about becoming president at some point?
I mean, that's, it's just like every member of the state house, every member of the United States, and every member of the state house thinks they could probably be governor, and every member of the U.S. Senate thinks that they could be president at some point. So, the bottom line is that Senator Booker has been a highly effective U.S. senator. Federal races for Republicans are tough. I agree with Jeanette on that 100%. We haven't had a Republican federal statewide officer since before both Jeanette and I were born. So it's been a long time, and in this state. So, and even in this particular climate right now, where the Democratic base is supercharged, as you're seeing all over the country, based on the opposition, both to President Trump and many of his policies, it makes it increasingly difficult for a Republican to win statewide in New Jersey. So, the idea of whether or not Senator Booker, who has indicated that he plans to run, I believe, for president again, whether that becomes a political liability, it probably doesn't in this type of race, both because of the effectiveness of the senator, his own popularity among the electorate, and then just some of the natural advantages that you have running as a Democrat statewide in a federal year.
Do you believe that the party, the Democrat Party specifically, Democratic Party, do you believe that the party is so fractured, though, at this point, with the Democratic Socialists pulling so far to one side versus the traditional Democrats? And where do you see the Democrats in the state of New Jersey? Do you see them with an Analiya Mejia now elected? Do you see the Democrats in New Jersey going by way of Zoran Mamdani in terms of democratic socialism?
I think the real issue right now is that we have one unifying factor in the Democratic Party, and that is our opposition to this president and the direction that he's taken our country in. So we have always had a big tent party. Right now, there is a tremendous amount of energy on what is perceived to be the center left of our party. And for sure, I don't think that is there's an internal debate, but after these primaries and what you have seen in these elections across the country and even in these special elections, that Democrats are unified in supporting Democrats no matter who comes out of these individual primaries. That being said, there's been no question of the impact of some of the Democrats who are more center left in our party. Senator Bernie Sanders, AOC, those endorsements have seemed to matter quite a bit. You saw what happened, obviously, in the New York City mayor's race. So there is a lot of energy in that particular wing of the party. But I continue to think that voters, primary voters, are less concerned about that kind of identification and more concerned about who they think is best right now to stand up to much of the stuff that's coming out of the White House.
All right, you know what? Let's both take or all take a break for a second, just to take a look at some numbers. I believe we have some numbers coming in right now. Okay, this is for District 11. Look at those numbers on your screen. Is it surprising that the incumbent here, Analia Mejia, has 83.4%? Of course, only 2% of the districts counted so far. Again, primaries, for those that don't realize, primaries are just a subset within a subset, right? So you have such a tiny fragment of a percent. But would it surprise you if the final number were somewhere that high, Jeanette?
Yeah, I didn't expect that to be much of a race. She really cleared the field when she won the special election, Ana Lilia Mejia in the 11th district. But I wanted to go to a point that Brendan just said about the unifying factor in the Democratic Party being President Trump. Well, guess what? The Democrats only have President Trump for a couple more years, and then they really need to get another unifying message that's based on what the public wants here. And no offense to Brendan, because he's been a tremendously effective public official, but I'm really concerned, and so should most Americans, and including Democrats like Brendan. The far left wing of the Democratic Party has gone so far left in endorsing these Democratic socialist candidates like Ana Lilia Mejia, and more to the point, Adam Hemway in the 12th congressional district, who are so far extreme. I mean, this is a person who, it was just recently reported, had volunteered for a front group of Al Qaeda, was an associate of the blind sheikh, who is, as we know, convicted in corroborating with the World Trade Center bombing, and is someone who said, well, there were no tunnels under the hospitals in Gaza, which we know is not true at all. So this is somebody who is very radical, and I think this does not bode well for the Democratic Party. A lot of Democrats said they do have an anti-Semitism problem in their party. So, it looks like the extremisms of the Democratic Party are taking over right now, and that is going to be a very big problem long term for the Democrats.
And the question, though, is that the party on the whole nationwide, or is that just in certain parts of the country? What if you look at the numbers of the population in the state of New Jersey, for instance, that have fled from the blue state to the red states? We've lost between 250 and 400,000 citizens uh, to Florida, South Carolina, Tennessee from New Jersey in the last few years. That's an enormous number when you're talking about a state of 9 million. The question is, whom are they being replaced by, and or are they even being replaced? But does that then leave more of a concentration of people who might be a little further to the left politically? We'll let you take that, Brenda.
No, absolutely. I mean, I think we have, yes, people have left the state, but we also have population growth in this state at the same time. We have many people who are coming from the tri-state area, coming from New York City, moving into counties like Somerset, like Burlington, like Monmouth, like my home county of Essex, who are Democratic leaning in their politics and growing the numbers of Democrats in this state. So I don't think we have a severe problem of population loss in this state or people flooding this state. This is still a very, very desirable place to live. There's a lot of indicators that show why people want to be here, why businesses want to be here at this point in time. And the people that are leaving, to your point, Ken, in places that are counties where Democrats traditionally did not do as well, are being replaced by people who are Democratic leaning in both their national and state politics. And you see that across the state in the results of these elections.
Mikey Sherrill's district, perfect example. I used to live in North Caldwell, and that was a Republican stronghold for decades. That was a Frelinghuysen district, and look what happened. You got a Mikey Sherrill, and now you got an Analia. So that is, that's where it goes. So it's pretty obvious. In fact, even little North Caldwell's town council or borough council was for decades Republican, and now it's Democrat controlled. So there is definitely a shift going on. The question is, though, again, getting back to what we said earlier, what kind of Democrats are we talking about? You look at a Joe DiVincenzo in Essex County. Joe DiVincenzo is a right down the middle. He 10 years
Right.
ago would have been a conservative, based on the modern Democrats. The way you'd look at him today. Today, I mean, by the likes of an Annalena, he would be considered a dinosaur, like a conservative in the party. Do the Democrats like Joe DiVincenzo? Do they have a future in the electorate in New Jersey?
I still think they do, Ken. I believe that. I think that much of the message, even in the CD11 races, I was involved in that race. That there's still a economic populism message that I believe is a mainstream message. I know in the media we want to put in our political discourse labels on that, but there is a economic populism that you see across these races right now that the Democrats are tapping into in terms of what they're talking about. They're talking about the issues of affordability. They're talking about making sure that billionaires pay their fair share. They're talking about tax equity. They're talking about healthcare reform because almost everyone in this country is struggling with the cost of healthcare, the cost of prescription drugs. And regardless of where that kind of fits in that spectrum within the Democratic Party, those are the things that Democrats are talking about, and mainstream Democrats, whether they be more center left or even center right, are talking about that each and every day. So I really focus less on these labels because I don't think that's how the electorate and even the Democratic primary electorate is thinking about these issues. They're listening not about what the label is. They're listening to what the message is. And many Democrats from this wing of the party that we're discussing are touching on those issues and touching on the things that primary voters and general election voters care about and want to hear. And I think that's what we need to be paying attention to. And that's what is also producing a winning formula for Democrats in these races.
By the way, just for clarity's sake, Joe DiVincenzo I've known for 20 years. When I use the word dinosaur, I don't want him to take offense. So I'm not saying that he's a dinosaur. I'm talking about hey, who doesn't like Joe DiVincenzo? I mean, really, that's the truth. I think no
You
matter
said
where
it,
you
not
stand
me.
politically. No, he's
Well,
held up. I used to be his neighbor. We're a longtime, very good friends. But so before we go to break, Jeanette, why don't we just take a look at some of the numbers right now? If we could have Gerald bring them up for us. Let's see where we are right now. So again, Cory Booker, of course, we don't have to. I think we're pretty sure where that's going. But take a look at this for the U.S. Senate on the Republican side. Murphy, pretty strongly in the lead. Again, only 11% of the districts
yeah.
in or the district in right now. Would it be a surprise to either one of you if Murphy were the Republican nominee here?
Yeah, it would be. I mean, he's a lesser known candidate, has not spent a lot of money. I believe, a former councilman in Tabernacle in Burlington County. So I would be surprised if he pulled out victorious. But who knows? It's a multi-candidate field. But again, like it's only 11%. I'd be curious to see where those votes were coming in from. Are they coming in from Burlington County? Then okay,
Mhm.
that would make sense to me.
All right. All right. I'm going to ask you both to stay a few minutes, if you would, through the break. And when we come back, we'll talk more with our panel, Jeanette Hoffman and Brendan Gill, as the count comes in for New Jersey's primary election. We're coming right back on New Jersey. And welcome back to our live coverage of New Jersey's June 2nd primary election. Voters are shaping the battles that will define the Garden State's political landscape this fall. Let us go back to our panel. Jeanette Hoffman, president of Marathon Public Affairs, former executive director of the New Jersey Republican State Committee and host of On New Jersey's Energy Matters, and Brendan Gill, a New Jersey Democrat who serves as an at-large member of the Essex County Commissioners. Good to have you both back. Before we move forward, I want to just quickly mention we got some news. One of the stories that's been kind of big has been New Jersey PBS. Because of the funding from the state being cut out, there was about $1 million in funding, et cetera. And a lot of people, by the way, I want to clarify something about what New Jersey PBS is. A lot of people whom I talk to, when you ask them, do you watch New Jersey PBS? And this is no offense to New Jersey PBS. They will say, oh, you mean Channel 13? Because remember, Channel 13, PBS, is licensed to Newark, but that is not the New Jersey PBS we're talking about. People get very confused with that. And when you ask most people, which channel of New Jersey PBS do you watch? They go, what do you mean? That's probably one of the reasons why financing went to zero in the state. The question is, are you watching PBS Channel 13 or one of the channels from the rest of New Jersey? And did it make sense for the state to keep funding that? Anyway, that said, and that aside, that's a debate for another show and another day. We just found out that Montclair State University has just been awarded NJPBS. So they will be running NJPBS. I believe one of the channels is based there now anyway. So they'll be running that for the state. Just information to go out there. The tower is there. I used to work at Channel 7. They used to share that tower. In fact, the little piece of that tower. But that is a very important piece of information because NJPBS is a source for news for the state of New Jersey. And I'm sure that whoever gets elected to whatever office will be wanting to talk to them as well. All right, that's it. Thank you very much both for waiting through our commercial break. Let's bring up some numbers right now. I want you to take a look at some of the races that have been called already. Again, this is the primaries. So because of that, some races are called. For U.S. Senate, again, on the Democrat side, Cory Booker ran unopposed. That's been called already for him. On the Republican side, this race has not yet been called, but you can see there's still a lot of numbers coming in. So we're back to the Senate. You can see right now 17% of the districts in. Murphy in the lead, 36.5% of the vote. Again, a lot of the night to go yet. We'll see what happens, but the count has been pretty quick with that. So we'll see what happens. Over in District 1, Norcross right now. Here is a called race. So Norcross will be running on, he was uncontested, so he will be running against whoever the Republican is. And in this case, the race is called. So we know it's going to be Galdo. And he was also uncontested. So that was an easy one to call. Look at the political expert that I am, Brendan and Jeanette. And District 2, just look at see, this is when they put the rookie on politics. They do the easy stuff for me. District 2, we have, can we go back, Gerald? I'm sorry, to District 2. All right, so there we go. So we have Mullock right now leading the pack with 31.2%. Only 13% of the district counted right now. Still a while ago, but it looks like a very tight race. And then, of course, on the Republican side, we know that Vandrew, he was unopposed and a former Democrat himself. 7 years ago, he switched over to the Republicans. But of course, he's a very strong Republican in the House. But we'll see what happens in that district. With the Democrats running against them. And then we'll just take a look at District 3 right now. None of the count in yet, but didn't have to be because he's unopposed. The race called Conaway will be running in that district against one of these three folks, either McGuire, Cullen, or Barbara, I should say, 27% of the district in for the Republicans, with McGuire leading the pack. Let's come out to our wonderful and very patient panel now. Do any of those numbers surprise either one of you?
Well, obviously,
yeah, no.
Go ahead, Brendan.
I was going to say, I think we're probably in violent agreement. Nothing there that's that surprising. I, of course, defer to Jeanette on the Republican primary for U.S. Senate. Murphy has an early lead. Don't really know where that vote's coming from just yet. He was, not considered to be, if there was a front runner, at least in that race at this point. But quite a bit to go statewide, in terms of that Republican primary. In District 2 on the Democratic side, which was, I'm sorry, Mr. Congressman Van Drew's district, I think you have a ways to go there too. This would be, Zach Mullick was a very strong candidate. Tim Alexander ran before. Bailey Winder was, to a certain extent, considered to be a little bit of a front runner. So that I think we have a ways to go there. That's an early number that, if that held, I don't think that was where many people thought that race was going. But again, quite a bit yet to come in that district as well.
How about yourself, Jeanette?
Yeah, I don't see anything that surprises me at all. And again, in the Senate race, it's just a little too early to tell. Really, the numbers that I'm looking for, Ken, are in District 7, the 7th congressional
Mhm.
district that Tom Kean has on the Democrat side. That's a very contested seat. So I'm really interested to see who's going to win that. Oh, it looks like Rebecca Bennett is in the lead by a lot, which polls showed that she was ahead, maybe not by that margin, but that does not surprise me. And then if you have the 12th congressional district, that has like 13 candidates there. But I think Adam Hemway, who we talked about before, who really went as far possible to the left as he could, especially in being anti-Israel and anti-Zionist and frankly anti-Semitic. I think that's he's had that coalition behind him. And I will say, when you are in that very big field of 13 candidates or so, and I'll say this for the Republicans, the further to the right or to the left that you go, the more you can coalesce people around you by defining yourself. So was that probably a smart strategy by Hemway? I guess so, but I mean that's going to be a problem for Democrats, I think, nationally, to have someone like that representing them in the caucus.
We have about 2 minutes left. I just want to once again talk about District 7, and of course Rebecca Bennett, who could practically be a clone of our current governor here, of Mikey Sherrill. I mean, a former helicopter pilot for the Navy. Where did we hear that before? And she's a healthcare leader. She's a mom, and she's in the lead, 48.1%, 23% of the district. And of course, it's a relatively low number, but she is quite in the lead. Is this the strategy at this point? Do you think for the Democrats moving forward? Is it to get somebody who appears friendly to the Republicans and somebody who is military, et cetera, but who may be very far left politically? Only the politics don't come out until post-election, Brandon.
Well, I think having strong candidates based on military background, based on running more women candidates, which the Democratic Party has been committed to doing, is a smart thing to do. And there's no question, like all the polling, to the extent that we are able to trust polling in this day and age, but all the polling showed very early on, even though Rebecca Bennett had limited electoral visibility, that she was popular when presented in front of the electorate. So a very simple answer to your question, Ken, is not so much about necessarily who the appeal is or who the appeal goes to. It's about the appearance of the candidate outright and how the electorate feels about them. And one thing that's very similar with our governor, Mikey Sherrill, and Rebecca Bennett, in addition to the fact that they're both Annapolis graduates, are both the graduates of the Naval Academy, that they go through helicopters in the Navy, that their moms civically engaged. But one of the other things that they have in common is that immediately when they were presented to the electorate responded very favorably and positively to them. And if you look at these numbers right here early on, I know we only have about 154 districts, precincts reporting out of the 661, but we already show Rebecca Bennett with a fairly commanding lead. And right now, those numbers that you're seeing on the screen have represented what much of the internal polling that was released by the various campaigns showed, that Rebecca Bennett was in the high 20s to high 30% of the overall vote, and everyone else in that district was hovering around 15, 16, 17%. So yes to the strategy going forward, if it works, and two, not surprising to see Rebecca Bennett have that early lead this early in the evening.
We should mention right now another race was called. Could we bring up NJ 8, please, Gerald, if you don't mind? Robert Menendez has been declared the winner in that primary against Ali. Probably not a big surprise, as he is the incumbent. And in order to lose, if you're an incumbent in Congress, what is it, somewhere between 80 and 90% get reelected. So it would have been kind of more of a shock if he didn't get that nomination. And then here we have in a race called, of course, in District 9. This is Mikey Sherrill's old district. No, is this? No, correction. This is the district that includes Patterson, right? That is
Bill,
Nellie Pope.
Congressman Pat, that's
Yeah.
Nellie
Congressman
Pope, I
Pat.
should say.
Yep.
Yes.
Bill
All right.
Pascal's
So
former.
that's, but she, again, that race called for her. Of course, she was unopposed there, and she is the incumbent. We look at District 9 on the Republican side. Wow, that's a little tight, getting tight with only 17%, 58% for Pino versus Burris, and 41.8%. Jeanette, in terms of some of the districts we talked about, one of them specifically, Tom Kaine's district, where do you see what's going on and whether it will have an impact with him come the fall? Do you think this is going to severely hurt him? When I say this, I'm talking about his obvious absence from all of the votes, missing over 100 votes, and the public at large not really knowing what's going on other than it's some kind of a medical issue.
Yeah, so nobody really wants to be out of Congress when you're a sitting member or off of the campaign trail for a prolonged absence. And of course, it's a medical issue, and everyone's hearts go out to the Kane family. And I've known Tom for 2 decades now, and he's a great public servant. And of course, he would be in DC if he could be. So certainly everyone wishes him well right now. He has said a couple weeks ago that he'll be back in a couple weeks. Today, he released a statement saying it's going to be a couple weeks more until his doctors let him go back to work. He said he understands the need for transparency, and he will be transparent about his absence when the time comes. So, yeah, it's not obviously an ideal scenario for someone in the most contested congressional districts in the country, but this is a district that he has represented very well for quite some time now, both in the state legislature and in Congress. And it has become more Republican in recent years due to redistricting. When Sue Altman, who's a pretty progressive Democrat, ran against him, she didn't even come close. He beat sitting Congressman Tom Malinowski 2 years prior to that. So listen, I know it's going to be a tough race for him, but I think he'll be up for it when he comes back. And I think voters know him. They know his record of constituent services, and they'll reelect him again in November.
But do you not think that just not being a little bit more forthcoming is really not healthy? I mean, look, when Joe Biden, former President Biden, when he would be gone for a week and a half at a time, Republicans seized on that and pounced on him. Now we're talking a congressman, not a
Well,
president,
it's a
obviously.
different situation. Yeah. I mean, it's a president of the United States versus one of 500 something members of Congress. But listen, he has said that he's coming back. He's sick. He's under a doctor's care, and we'll find out when we find out. Obviously, it's not ideal. It's not an ideal situation, but my heart goes out to him and his family, and we wish him well, and we'll see what happens on the campaign trail when he's back.
All right. And how do you feel, Brendan, about that situation? And do you think it's going to possibly hand a victory to whomever the Democrat is come the fall?
Well, first and foremost, my heart also goes out to the congressman and his family with whatever he's dealing with medically, and we hope that he's able to deal with that and overcome it. But as a political matter, this is absolutely going to be a political issue. He has a long history of not answering both to the media and to his constituents. And in this climate that we are in, particularly with all the momentum that is behind the Democrats, and I think will behind whoever the nominee who comes out in District 7, this is going to be a problem for him. His continued absence, his continued unwillingness to be transparent and speak to the media is not going to go away, and I think it's going to be detrimental to his long-term electoral prospects.
All right. Jeanette Hoffman, president of Marathon Public Affairs, former executive director of the New Jersey Republican State Committee, host of On New Jersey's Energy Matters, and Brendan Gill, New Jersey Democrat who serves as an at-large member of the Essex County Board of Commissioners, County Commissioners. Thank you both for all of your insight tonight. We'll keep watching for the rest of the evening, and we'll have a full wrap-up tomorrow morning. I thank you both for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having us, Ken.
Thanks for having me, Ken.
You bet. Thank you. And when we come back, we'll welcome two additional panelists, Alyssa Maurice, president of the Pennsylvania and New Jersey chapter of the American Association for Public Opinion Research, and New Jersey 10th District Assembly member, Republican Paul Kenitra, as the count comes in for New Jersey's primary election. We're coming right back. Welcome back to our live coverage of New Jersey's June 2nd primary election. Voters are shaping the battles that will define the Garden State's political landscape this fall. Let us welcome a new panel, and we will do that in just a moment. First, we want to take a look at some of the numbers. We already had races called throughout the state. And remember, we have the U.S. Senate up for grabs right now in the primary. Cory Booker ran unopposed. So on the Democrat side, he has that nomination. On the Republican side, not so much, though. Only 22% of the count done for the Republicans. Four candidates you could see for U.S. Senate: Murphy, Tabor, Zidane, and Leibovitz. And right now in the lead is Murphy, but again, only about 65,000 votes in so far out of about 300,000 they're looking at to count. In the first congressional district, we have a race called here on the Democrat side. Donald Norcross is the winner there. And of course, he is the incumbent. He was uncontested. And then on the Republican side, in District 1, the race was called there for winner Damon Galdo. So he will be running against the Democrat. In District 2, this is a four-way race still going on with only 27% of the count in right now. So, of course, there's a lot more night to go with that. We will get back to some of those numbers in a minute. In the meantime, let's bring on our new panel. Alyssa Maurice, president of the Pennsylvania and New Jersey chapter of the American Association for Public Opinion Research, and New Jersey's 10th District Assembly member, Republican Paul Kenitra. Let's welcome. Oh, we don't have Paul yet. All right. So do we have Alyssa right now? All right. Let's bring on Alyssa. From Stockton University. Okay, excuse me, Paul. Alyssa, brother, let's bring you on right now. If we do, there we go. I'm sorry, Alyssa. Nice to have you
Hi.
on. Thank you so much. Again, live television, we juggle, we make it work. First off, are you seeing any surprises tonight yet at this point?
Not yet at this point, really. I think, in District 7, Rebecca Bennett was the front runner all along. So I don't think there's too much of a surprise there. I'm looking at District 2 being down here from South Jersey. That is the race to watch for me. And it looks like last I saw that Zach Mullick is leading. And I think that makes sense given the messaging of this primary. It's largely been about electability and who can compete with incumbent Republican Jeff Andrew, who has won very comfortably in this district. So, I so far a long way to go tonight, though. So we'll see how the rest of the night shakes out.
Do you feel that Jeff Andrew is safe because you have I mean, he was a Democrat in a district that was somewhat more Democrat years ago. He shifted to the Republican Party 7 years ago. So does that make him amenable, if you will, to both the Democrats and the Republicans because he's been in both parties and he made his friends in among the Democrats years ago, and he's been a very loyal Republican ever since?
Yeah, you make a good point that because he was once a Democrat, he is really deeply entrenched in the region. He's a fixture of the region, really, and so he does have those deep ties, and that's hard to compete with. But since the district has become more reliably red, he has embraced Trump more and more, and so that could put him in a vulnerable position in this year's midterm cycle when the national mood has really turned on President Trump. Democrats are looking to seize on that opportunity. Many voters are discontent with the state of the economy. They're still very concerned about affordability and inflation. And President Trump's approval ratings are really lagging. And so, if any year is the year to potentially try to unseat Jeff Andrew, Democrats see this cycle as their opportunity. And, I think the candidates recognize that they will have an uphill battle in the general election. We're seeing that they took a bit of a different approach down here than the candidates in, say, District 12, which is much more reliably Democratic. The candidates in the race down in District 2 have tread more carefully on the issues, and they're focused on things like affordability, fighting for the working class, these broader messages of economic populism that can appeal to those moderate voters. So they've really focused on electability and been a bit careful in their messaging in this primary.
Right. You know what? Let's bring up one more number right now, if we can, Alyssa. Can you bring up, Gerald, please, the LaMonica MacGyver, who is in District 10 running for Congress. That race has just been called. So McIver, who had, she's the incumbent, and she had Lawrence Poster running against her, but it's been called. You could see quite a large number, 87.2%. But even though there's only 24% of the district counted, remember, LaMonica McIver still stands charged with a 3-count federal indictment for forcibly impeding and interfering with federal officers outside Delaney Hall earlier in the year. We've been talking so much about what's happening of late outside Delaney Hall, we forgot that there was still that just happened not too long ago with LaMonica McIver. So do you think that she stands any kind of a challenge from Republicans, or is her district just a very safely Democrat district, Alyssa?
I think the general election is really going to depend a lot on what happens from now until November and where the national mood stands. Public opinion can be pretty fickle on certain issues. It does. We've been on a bit of a roller coaster in terms of public opinion related to immigration in particular here in New Jersey. Our polling has really shown that pretty big changes over the years, depending on what's going on at the national level. And so I think it's really going to depend, how these actions resonate with voters is going to depend on that national mood. Primary elections are often really decided by a small and highly engaged slice of the electorate. So it's really about those campaign fundamentals and who can get their supporters to the polls. And so, they're not as big of a test as that general election, and a lot can change from now until then.
Absolutely. Just to look also back to the 10th, if we can, let's look at the Republican side. Carmen Bucco, that race was called for Carmen as well. Can we take a look? District 10, if we can bring it up, Gerald. All right, so we have there we go. So Carmen Bucco, you can see the numbers there, 0%, but he was unopposed. So it's fair to say that the race is called and he wins. So in that case, it's going to be LaMonica McIver, and who is the incumbent, excuse me, against Carmen Bucco, again in the 10th district. So we have a number of races already called here. We could race through some of them if we can. Gerald, bring me back to District 8, if you don't mind. That's the Menendez district. That was already called as well. Let's take a look at both the Democrat and Republican side. We just want to show those numbers again. In 8. Okay, so in District 8, fairly substantial number. There's almost 73% for Rob Menendez versus 27% for Ali. And then in District 9, Nellie Poe, who, of course, that's the district encompassing Patterson and Passaic. And that race is, of course, called already because she ran unopposed, and she is the incumbent. Over to District 9's Republicans, though, this is fairly tight, not called yet with only 21% of the district in, but 55 to 44% Pino over Burris right now. We'll see where that race goes. What would you say, Alyssa, are the major issues impacting the state of New Jersey right now, issues that people will keep in mind, or did keep in mind at least when they went to the polls?
Yeah, well, it's absolutely still affordability. Affordability still dominates the conversation for voters. In terms of the national mood right now, Democrats definitely have reason to enter the 2026 midterm cycle with a sense of optimism. We know that historically the party out of power benefits in midterm elections, and the political conditions are certainly working in their favor right now. President Trump's approval ratings are lagging. The economy is still a huge concern. People are not satisfied with the direction things are going. So Democrats know they have a big opportunity this cycle to make some gains in Congress. But I will say that the approach that candidates are taking really depends on, their district and the electoral makeup of their district. The issues that they focus on are really dependent on the region that they're in. So many of these congressional primaries have become really nationalized, and they're serving as testing grounds for broader debates within the Democratic Party over immigration, Israel and Gaza, economic populism, how aggressively Democrats should be confronting President Trump. Candidates are increasingly running on those national messages, but it really depends on the district and the composition of voters. That's not so much the case down here in South Jersey. We see the Democratic candidates in District 2 have taken a much different approach. We recently hosted a Democratic debate between the 4 candidates, and I think the most explicitly progressive position was from Tim Alexander, who was in support of abolishing ICE. That's probably the most progressive position we heard. Other than that, the larger theme among all the candidates was really a more moderate message of electability and fighting for the working class. So it depends on the district, what issues they're focusing on and their approach to this race.
All right, Alyssa Maurice, if you wouldn't mind staying with us through the break, we're going to take a break right now. And when we come back, we'll have more with Alyssa Maurice and also Assemblyman Paul Kenitra as the count continues to come in for New Jersey's primary election. You're watching On New Jersey for the special report, and we're coming right back. Welcome back to our live coverage of New Jersey's June 2nd primary election on New Jersey. Voters are shaping the battles that will define the Garden State's political landscape this fall. And we will go to a panel of specialists, of experts that we've been talking to in just a couple of moments. We first want to bring up some of the numbers if we can right now. We have a number of races already called, and this is no surprise. Some are incumbents, some ran unopposed. Let's start right at the top. Let's show the Senate race if we can. Gerald, let's start with that. So Cory Booker ran unopposed. Of course, he's the incumbent senator, so he's already called. But on the Republican side, look what has just happened. Now, there's only 31% of the count of that district in, but it was basically Murphy leading the pack by far 15 minutes ago. As more numbers have come in, look at this. We have really a three-way, very tight race between Murphy, Zidane, and Tabor. Leibovic's a little behind in the pack, a lot of counting to go yet. But taking a look at those numbers, it's anyone's race to be had on the Republican side. It'll be interesting to see Murphy, Zidane, Tabor, those three just separated by a few points. So we'll see where that goes. We're going to keep an eye on that all night. But one of those likely three, based on the way the numbers are going right now, would be the Republican candidate against Cory Booker. For Cory Booker, of course, very powerful. The way the numbers go, if you are an incumbent senator or a Congress member, senators win re-election by between 80 and 90%. Congress members win re-election by about 92%. So it is very, very difficult to unseat somebody who is currently holding office. But you don't know darn well those Republicans are going to make a yeoman's effort to do so, especially pointing out that Cory Booker has tried time and time again running for president and likely will do so again. And so the question is, how committed is Cory Booker to being senator of the state of New Jersey versus somebody who's coming up behind him, albeit in the on the Republican side, running for that same particular office. Let's take a look at some of the other Congress seats, if we can, please. Let's go to District 1. District 1, that race was called already on the Democrat side, but we'll take a look at the numbers. Norcross, of course, this is Donald Norcross. He is the incumbent, ran unopposed, so that race was already called for him. Let's go to the Republican side, and you can see that Galdo is the winner there, and he ran unopposed on the Republican side. On the Democrat side in District 2, this is a tight four-way race, or at least for the first three. Mullock, Alexander, and Winder, and that could go anywhere with 50% of the districts in. Again, we don't have a breakdown of where the precincts are that handed Mullock that number of almost 40%, but he's strongly in the lead now. Jeff Van Drew in District 2, the very, very powerful Republican who shifted from the Democrat Party himself. Those who don't remember, 7 years ago, Jeff Van Drew was a very traditional down-the-middle Democrat who shifted over to the Republicans. So Jeff Van Drew, of course, would run against or would be have that contest with one of the Democrats that we just showed on the screen. Can we bring up District 3, if we can? Yes. So Conway, this is Herb Conway, and the race was called just a little while ago. It was uncontested on his side, running as a Democrat. On the Republican side, it's a three-way race, and you have McGuire versus Cullen versus Barbera. And right now, McGuire is strongly in the lead with 57.2% and 36% reporting. Still a lot of counting to go, so we'll keep an eye on that race as well. For District 4, we have the race called for Rachel Peace. She has almost 3/4 of the vote, handily defeating John Blake. On the Republican side, this is let's go back to the Republican. If we can, we got to fix that. So this is in District 4, the Republican side. This was an uncontested race. We want to show that Christopher Smith, who is that was, again, an uncontested race. So he's already been declared the winner on the Republican side. Moving down, let's go to District 5. District 5 on the Democrat side, we probably all know this name, Josh Gottheimer. So he was uncontested. Of course, the race called already. He's the incumbent. And then on the Republican side, we have Sean Corain, who is that race was called on the Republican side because he ran unopposed. Not too many Republicans wanted to go up against Josh Gottheimer, a very powerful congressman in his district. Let's go back to Alyssa Maurice from Stockton University. Is Alyssa still with us, Gerald? All right, let's bring Alyssa Maurice back up. Alyssa, do you see any surprises so far with any of the numbers that we've shown?
You know, what's striking to me as you pull up the numbers for each of these districts is really the difference in enthusiasm that we're seeing. We're seeing these large candidate fields on the Democratic side and not so much on the Republican side. And I think that's largely because Republicans understand the realities of running in New Jersey, the structural disadvantage they would have, given that there's a large voter registration advantage for Democrats throughout New Jersey. So it's just interesting to see these really competitive races on the Democratic side. I think we're seeing, the enthusiasm probably likely sparked by Governor Mikey Sherrill's big win in the fall. It's really led to a lot of candidates jumping in these races. I think the fall of the county line is also contributing to these more competitive primaries. So it's interesting. It's been interesting to see that this is, the first federal primary where we're really seeing the full impact of the post county line era. So a lot of competitive races to watch.
Indeed. And the county line, to talk about the county line rule and how that impacts members of the party, because it sounds a little confusing, but it certainly, it was ruled that they had to abolish that, of course. And so that's been done away with for about a year. But Talk about how that impacts politics in New Jersey.
Yeah, so under the old system, candidates were able to rely on local endorsements and having that favorable ballot position to give them that boost and that name recognition. Without that favorable ballot position, the races are certainly more competitive. They're less predictable. Candidates can no longer rely on that placement and party endorsements alone. So there's more of a level playing field, which means more candidates see an opportunity for themselves. It does also mean, though, that resources become a lot more important. So, another consequence of removing the county line is that money can matter more than ever. The candidates now need resources to communicate directly with voters. They can no longer just count on those endorsements and that ballot placement that they seek. So naturally, that elevates the importance of fundraising and outside spending. So, candidates now have to build that name recognition largely on their own in these crowded primaries where voters may not know much about many of the candidates. That voter outreach becomes even more critical. And the result is that fundraising can have maybe an outsized influence on who breaks through in a crowded field. So definitely interesting dynamics that we're seeing play out.
Yeah, because we're talking about some candidates running who would have walked away instantly, and they really had to work at it this time out in order to get the votes, as the district lines were not quite the same as they were before, right? That must have been not the most pleasant thing. I'm sure the candidates would deal with what they have to deal with, but traditionally that's not the way New Jersey politics have gone, and things are quite different this year for a lot of the candidates. Listen, Marie, Stockton University, we appreciate you coming on tonight. Very, very busy night, I'm sure, for you and for all of us. Thank you so much for your insight.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. And when we come back, we still have a lot more show to go, so we don't want you to go anywhere. We have Paul Kenitra, who is a member of the State Assembly. He's going to be talking about the race for the Senate. We're also going to be talking to former New Jersey State Assemblyman John Wisniewski as the count comes in for New Jersey's primary election. Don't go away. We're coming right back on New Jersey's special primary election night coverage. is 9 o'clock. The polls have been closed for an hour now in New Jersey. And good evening and welcome back to our live coverage of New Jersey's June 2nd primary election coverage. Tonight, voters are shaping the battles that will define the Garden political landscape this fall. In the U.S. Senate race, 4 Republicans are battling for the chance to take on incumbent Democrat Cory Booker in November. The winner of this primary earns the right to try to unseat one of the most recognizable and powerful names in New Jersey politics and entire Senate. We have a number of people running on the House side as well. The action just as intense there. Second congressional district, we have 4 Democrats who are fighting to challenge Republican Congressman Jeff Van Drew, himself a former Democrat, switching parties just 7 years ago. And then in the 4th district, of course, Democrats see a rare opportunity to possibly flip a longtime Republican stronghold. District 12, there's a massive field. 14 candidates came out, turning the primary into one of the most crowded and unpredictable races in the state. So the polls are now closed again as of an hour ago across New Jersey. Final results have been trickling in. We have some races called, some still up in the air. Let's talk about the Senate race right now. Let's go to New Jersey State Assemblyman Republican Paul Kenitra. We welcome you, Paul.
Ken, how are you?
Great to have you here. So on the Democrat side, of course, no shock. Cory Booker ran unopposed. He is the incumbent. Usually incumbents in the Senate have an 80 to 9%, a 90% reelection rate. And you could see that, of course, he ran unopposed. But on the Republican side, looking at the numbers now, 36% of the districts in, and this is still a fairly tight race, like a 3-way race, it feels like it's turning into, with Murphy, Tabor, and Zidane. Do those numbers surprise you at all?
Look, I'll go so far as to say this is the shock of the night so far. I know all 3 people. I've paid attention to the race pretty closely. And let's just start off by the clearest metric. Even though we've lost the county line, if you're looking at county endorsements, Justin Murphy had the least. He only had 3 counties. They were relatively small. I think he had Gloucester, Mercer, and Camden. Alex Zidane by far had the most. Rich Tabor had the second most. And to see Justin Murphy there with a third of the vote in already is pretty surprising. And I've been talking with some other pundits in New Jersey, political masterminds, and I can tell you, most people did not see this coming. And this is a very important race, especially for a what could be a little bit of a wave election, and Democrats with momentum in the House side of things. Having a strong Senate candidate for the Republicans is going to be absolutely crucial for voter turnout. And Justin Murphy, it's shocking to me what's going on. I'll use another metric too. I look at social media, right? I'm a populist. I think, seeing groundswell of support is an important thing. I checked out Justin Murphy's Facebook and Instagram page. There's 400 and 450 people that like each one, which is a fraction of where Zidane and Tabor are at. And I just don't know where it's all coming from. Now he probably has the least baggage, in a race that's been a little nasty. But you tell me, did you see this coming?
No, honestly, we talked about it earlier today as well. And I think that I didn't think anyone was going to necessarily come up that strong, especially not, and no offense to Murphy, but I just think that the name recognition wasn't there as much as some of the other candidates. And that's a bit surprising. The question, though, is if a Murphy gets the nomination for the Republicans, now you're going against somebody who is an established United States senator, who has a cash machine, who has the whole machine work of the Democrat Party behind him. What possibility would any Republican in the state of New Jersey have against a Cory Booker come November?
Look, I'll be frank. I mean, I think a lot of times elected officials like to sugarcoat things a little bit, but the reality of the situation is blue states once in a while elect Republican governors because of the financial aspects of it. But you are hard pressed to find a blue state that has a Republican senator over the last 20 years. And especially a substantially blue state like New Jersey. It is a tough call. But someone like Murphy that has true bona fides as a conservative. He's a veteran. He's a 2A supporter. He checks all the boxes. Maybe he reaches some of the Trump voters who feel disenfranchised, don't normally believe in politicians, don't want to turn out to vote. It's still a very long night, and I still think some of the advantages that Zidane and Tabor had, as we talked about earlier, probably will pull them even closer, and it's going to be a real horse race down to the wire.
And well, you know what? I know somebody who's clamoring at the bit to come on, somebody who used to be in the chamber that you're in all the time. Let's bring in former Democrat Assemblyman John Wisniewski. John, would you like to come into this conversation? We talked earlier today. Obviously, no surprise with Cory Booker. He ran unopposed. He is the incumbent. But on the Republican side, seeing those numbers, do they surprise you at all?
No, I don't think they surprise me. I mean, look, I will defer to those who are more schooled in Republican primaries, but there's a perceived opportunity for someone to challenge Cory Booker. And I think that right now it looks like Justin's going to be the leader in that pack and is going to come out successful. But as was pointed out, we haven't seen a Republican U.S. Senator in New Jersey since Clifford Case. And that's when I was a senior in high school. So it's been a long time, and I don't think that's changing anytime soon.
So wait a second. You told us you were 28 years old. So what are you saying?
Yeah, I'm kind of stuck at that age, you know?
That's what I stopped counting at 21. Um, in terms of just establishing a name, do you think that some of these candidates do this just to establish a name for a future run at maybe a different office? Maybe one of them runs for Congress, but now they have an established name, they have a political action committee, et cetera. Is that maybe a strategy?
Well, I think it's more than just establishing a name. I think if you quit yourself well, right? You're in the Republican scrum for the United States Senator, and you raise the money, you do the organizing, you put the shoe leather in, and you have a good result. You're setting yourself up for some future run, whether it's running for governor, running for Congress, running for a legislative seat, and I think that's always kind of the secondary prize for those people who are running for the nomination to be the candidate against Cory Booker. There's something in the future that they're looking at as well.
Over to Paul again. Paul, when you have a Cory Booker who has attempted to run for president before, may be running. I mean, every indication it's the worst kept secret in the world, I guess, because I guess every senator wants to be a president. We said this earlier in the broadcast. Um, if it were to come forward that that between now and November, the Cory Bookers can't say that if I'm elected, reelected, that I will serve the full 6-year term. Do you think that would have any kind of an impact with people today, or do they just believe that he is such a strong senator for the state of New Jersey that it wouldn't matter?
It certainly could hurt him. But look, you also don't know what baggage somebody has and what opposition research could wind up turning up, right? I'll use a perfect example. Young whippersnapper Congressman Chris Smith back in, 1981. He wound up throwing his hat in the ring for Congress. It was insurmountable odds. There was the ab scam scandal, and he was really the last one left standing. And here he is. He's been in Congress since then. So it's not just name recognition for the future, and if Cory runs for something bigger or not, and if he disenfranchises his voters, he's been in office for a long time. Politicians do crazy things when they get a taste of power, and you never know what could come out. So it's a long race until November, whether it's Justin Murphy, whether it's Rich Tabor, Alex Zidane. If they're standing there and Cory Booker takes a couple blows and gets damaged, they could be the last one in the fight.
All right. Paul Kaditra, Assemblyman for the Republican Party, state of New Jersey. We're going to let you go. We appreciate you taking the time on this night. I know it's a very busy night for you. You got a lot more to do tonight, so we thank you for coming on tonight. We're going to ask our friend, Mr. Wisniewski, though, to stick around for a few minutes. Thank you again, Paul. Again, 10 minutes after 9. It's an hour and 10 minutes since the polls have closed in New Jersey. A number of the races have been called for the primary, both Democrat and Republican side. And we're going to bring back former Assemblyman John Wisniewski now had to go through some of the numbers that we have people running for Congress. Let's, if we could have Gerald bring up the different candidates. Let's start with District 1, if we can, Gerald. And we'll go through them and just get your response to what we have.
Sure.
There we go. So in District 1, this is a race, of course, called this is the uncontested race with incumbent Donald Norcross. And on the Republican side, you had Damon Galdo, who that race was called, of course, uncontested as well. Is that a big surprise for you in
No.
that case with both two uncontested candidates?
I mean, Donald does a great job. I served with him in the legislature. Great job as a congressman. He had no opposition. That's going to be a really strong race for him in November. That's a very strong Democratic district. So I don't see that changing.
Okay, and let's go to District 2 if we can right now. District 2 has Mullock. Okay, so we're starting on the Republican side, of course. Jeff Van Drew, former Democrat, 7 years ago, switched parties to the Republican side, very strong among the Republicans in Congress. And then on the Democrat side, you had a four-way race there, not yet called, 56% reporting, but Mullock pretty strongly ahead with nearly 39% of the vote for him. Do you see that as much of a surprise?
Well, I think that race in the second district is one to watch in November. I think that Jeff Van Drew made the change to run as a Republican, kind of as an opportunist, not because of conviction. And that is not a solidly Republican district. It leans Republican, but given the current climate nationally, Jeff Van Drew could be in trouble.
And Jeff Van Drew has voted along with President Trump on a number of votes and has expressed a lot of solidarity with President Trump. To hear him speak today, you would never know that he was ever a member of the Democrat Party, sort of like Reagan was a Democrat in California, 30 years or whatever prior to becoming president. And then, of course, he became one of the most right-leaning conservatives in the history of the country.
Well, I was state
so
party chair when he was a Democrat, and I wasn't sure he was a Democrat back then. So.
And there you have it. Talk about, once again, we talked about this morning, I guess, a little bit, how the new system in New Jersey, or the revised system of county line, et cetera, being abolished, and what kind of impact that may have had for these candidates tonight.
Well, I think when you look at some of the districts, right, you see a group of, not two people running, not three people running, but a dozen running for office. That's really a sign that there's a view among those candidates that because of the lessening of the importance of the county organization, that they have a shot at winning. And Ana Lilia Mejia in her district actually proved that theory correct, because when she ran to take Governor Mikey Sherrill's congressional seat, she was not viewed as the leading candidate. Tom Malinowski was. But because there was a scrum of candidates and she had a very solid base, she was able to prevail in that primary. And of course, this time, very token opposition to her. And so she'll be coming back as the Democratic candidate and congressperson for that district. But people are looking at what happened then as a model for what they can possibly do now. And that's why you see so many people running to succeed Bonnie Watson Coleman. And time will only tell whether that continues to be a model for the future for candidates running for congressional seats.
And of course, Ana Lilia Mejia is, of course, in the seat that Mikey Sherrill had when she was a Congress member. And Mikey Sherrill unseated, or I should say won, in a district that was held by Frelinghuysen for years, a Republican. We're talking about a district that has towns like North Caldwell, et cetera, that has shifted dramatically politically from the right to the center, to the left. And we're not just talking a little left, we're talking to the left. Are you surprised that that's happened? And what do you attribute that to?
Well, I think, the description of to the left is probably overblown. I think what you're seeing are voters looking for something other than the standard candidate, the standard policy, the standard positions that they've heard over time. And so, going back to when Bernie Sanders ran for president, uh, he was as successful as he was, not specifically because he was talking about Medicare for all, but because he was willing to break from the established orthodoxy, that he was willing to take and go in a different position to challenge the conventional wisdom. And I think there's a hunger in the electorate for candidates who can do that, and they can be successful.
Like her politics or not, Annalena Mejia worked very, very hard for that election and won
Nobody
hands
can
down
take that
by
away from
far.
her. Yeah, nobody can take
Absolutely,
that. She
absolutely.
worked it, and she was positioned very well because she provided that choice, the different kind of candidate who was talking about some bread and butter issues that other candidates weren't, and she worked it hard and she succeeded.
Yeah, I think, and you could speak to this much more than I can, certainly, having been in elective office. But doesn't it really come down to, in many cases, a lot of people on either side of the aisle want the same outcome. We want to be here. We want everybody with, chicken in every pot kind of a deal, but it's how to get there. And whoever can explain how to get there most clearly and most simply is usually the more victorious.
I agree with you, but I think right now we're at a point nationally, on a state level, everywhere, where voters are hungering for something other than what they've been given. And whether they're Democrats or Republicans, if you look at the common thread of where either candidates have succeeded or have come close to succeeding, it's not because of a chicken in every pot. It's because
Mhm.
they've been willing to break with the established orthodoxy and offer voters a different way, perhaps a more optimistic way of looking at policy and politics and offering those voters something different. Voters want to see change. And this
Mhm.
is, Democrats at their peril will look at this election as just simply a referendum on Donald Trump. There is some of that this November, but it's also about voters, 2 years ago wanted change, and now again they want change. And those candidates who will be successful long term will be able to embrace that change and channel that change and convince voters that they represent that change.
All right. Well, if you could hang with us for just a moment, John, I'd
Sure.
appreciate that. We're going to take a quick break right now. You're watching On New Jersey's special primary election night coverage. We have a lot more numbers to give you when we come back in 2 minutes. And welcome back to our live coverage of New Jersey's June 2nd primary election. I'm Ken Rosato. Voters shaping the battles that'll define the Garden State's political landscape this fall. We welcome back former New Jersey Assemblyman John Wisniewski. He was a Democrat, now a very prominent and successful, I should say, attorney in the state of New Jersey, and very insightful, knows what can I say, where the bodies are buried? That's probably not a good thing to say. Well, he knows everything about politics in New Jersey. And it's always a pleasure to have him on, John. So let's take a look, if we can, really quickly before we wrap things up here, at some of the
Sure.
numbers, some of the bigger races. Can we look at district? Let's look at the Vandrew district again, if we can, Gerald. If you could bring that up for us, see where the numbers stand right now. All right. So, all right, that's Senate. We'll get it. We'll get it.
There we go.
All right. So we'll go back. So in District 2, we just quickly had, it looked like some high numbers there. All right. So now we have Mullick in the lead with 60% in, 38.5%. If Mullick wins, pulls this off on the Democrat side, how strong will the donations come in, if you will, to try to unseat Jeff Van Drew?
Well, I think that he will, if he's successful tonight, be able to raise the money that's necessary. There's a real hunger in that area, in that part of the state, really across the state, to do something about unseating Jeff Van Drew. And so he will be able to raise money from within the district, but you will see contributions come from across the state and really across the nation.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be a big one. And I'm sure there are still
Absolutely.
members of the electorate in that district, or what was the district when it was county line. There are members of the electorate who probably are still very upset when they voted for a Democrat who later switched to the Republican Party. I know that a lot of folks would be quite upset at that. They thought they voted for one thing and they got another. Let's go to the 10th district, if we can. If we could bring up the 10th district, that is LaMonica McIver. That district was called for LaMonica McIver. Not a shock.
Sure.
She's the incumbent. She was contested, or it was contested. Lawrence Poster was running against her, but she's soundly won with 86.5%. You can see 50% in, but she has that. On the Republican side, also Carmen Bucco was called for, but LaMonica McIver very, very strong in her numbers. Does she have anything to worry about in terms of? There are two things, but first off, in terms of winning re-election, and then we'll talk about the indictment.
No, first of all, you hate to say that it's a done deal or that, it's a foregone conclusion. Every election is run until the last votes count, but she represents an overwhelmingly Democratic district. She is a former council member in the city of Newark. She has deep roots within the community. She has a very well-oiled campaign machine. It's just unthinkable that she could do anything but succeed this November.
Yeah, and we won't get into the whole issue, but there are 3 federal indictments. The video shows that she was outside Delaney Hall, and she, what appears to be, had her arms up when officers were kind of pushing her, and that was supposedly, that was her assaulting a police officer. I don't want to. I'm not trying to pick a side. I'm not trying to pick a side. It is what it is.
It's a made up. It's a made up charge just for political opportunism on the part of the administration. They wanted to try. Look, they charged the mayor first, and then they dropped that for almost identical conduct. So you have to wonder where they're going with it. It really seems to be trumped up charges.
Yeah, I mean, if it was video of her picking up something and hitting an officer, it's one thing. But anyway, we'll let. Hopefully, a jury of her peers will make a decision based on what the evidence presents. But that could change things. But it's not like if the indictment went through and she were convicted, it's not like that district would suddenly go Republican, because it would not, likely.
No, not a chance. Not a
No,
chance.
thank you for clarifying. I was trying to be as gentle as I could with it, right? Let's also look at some of the other districts we didn't hit. Let's look at, for instance, in the 5th district, that's Josh Gottheimer's district. And Sean Corain ran for the Republicans. he was unopposed, as Josh Gottheimer obviously is unopposed. Josh Gottheimer, an extremely powerful congressman, very popular in the district. What chance does a Republican have against a Josh Gottheimer in that district?
It's small. Look, that was once, a long time ago. Scott Garrett was the Republican congressman. Marge
Mhm.
Rockema was the Republican congresswoman. And that part of the state had far more conservative leanings than it does now. Well, one of the things that you can see across the state is the state has become bluer in some of the more historically Republican areas. The district that Mikey Sherrill had represented, and now Anna Lilia Meja, is really, a district that has changed over time to become more and more Democratic. And so Josh, just coming off a run for governor, he developed a statewide footprint and recognition, acquitted himself very well, obviously didn't succeed. But as we talked earlier, there's always that opportunity for candidates who run successfully statewide to use that as kind of an argument. Like, look what I was able to do last time out. Why don't you think about me for something else in the future? Whether
Mhm.
certainly Josh will continue to be the congressman there. But down the road, is he looking at after 8 years of Governor Sherrill, maybe he's thinking about another run for governor. Maybe he's thinking about an opportunity in the United States Senate. Who knows?
Mhm. All right. Well, I think that's where we're going to wrap it up. Former Democratic New Jersey State Assemblyman John Wisniewski has been with us on the air since 7 o'clock this morning. We appreciate you coming
That's
back
right.
on all your insight. Thank you so much, John. We always love having you on, and have a wonderful night.
Ken, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
We appreciate you. Thank you, sir. And that wraps up our live coverage of New Jersey's June 2nd primary election. I'm Ken Rosato. Be sure to join us starting 7 a.m. tomorrow. We'll have a full wrap up of all the winners for you. Till then, thanks for watching and have a very good night.